Hey, this is Tom from MVP Chess. Welcome back to Your Move, where I analyze chess.com member games for free. If you want to appear on the next episode of Your Move, please submit an instructive or entertaining game you played in the comments section. Okay, today we've got a really interesting game submitted by chess.com user Johnny Zinho, rated 1964 from Brazil. His opponent, rated 1946, is from Poland. Let's jump right in. After e4, we have a Sicilian on the board, and Johnny chooses knight c3. So going for an anti-Sicilian, I think this is a really practical decision. You don't want to play the open Sicilian and get your opponent's favorite knight or for dragon variations on the board. This is a nice practical decision. So after bishop b5, g6, f4, this is the start, kind of the tabia of the Grand Prix Attack. So it's all about the f5 square, okay? And White's intentions aren't exactly subtle. He's basically signaling to Black, I'm going to play f4, and I'm going to try to tear your head off, okay? And Black is going to try to prevent that, obviously, and in particular, try to prevent this key pawn break, pawn to f5. So we have bishop g7, bishop takes c6. That's fine. I probably wouldn't take on c6 unless I was provoked to do it, like with a6. But after knight f3, d6, castles, knight f6, e3, we've got a pretty typical Grand Prix structure here. Black castles. White plays this prophylactic move, rook b1. Not entirely necessary here, but hey, it's always a good idea to get the rook off this line of the dark square bishop, especially since you might want to play b3 a little bit later in case a rook comes to the b file. And Black decides to make the pawn break d5. Okay, in this position, over to you. This is our first, I would say, critical point in the game. What are you playing here with White? Pause your videos, try to find the best continuation. How do you handle the move d5? Okay, in the game, White played e5. I do not think this is best. I think the most interesting move, the most thematic move in this position is queen to e1. Why do I say that? Well, first of all, gets the queen off the d file. Okay, so if we ever have an exchange on e4, queens are staying on the board. That's what we want when we're playing the Grand Prix Attack. Remember, we're attacking. It maintains the balance on the e4 square. Black never really wants to take here, right? Because look, these pawns on c5 and b6 are ragged. Meanwhile, White's got a really nice central pawn duo, more space. White's doing really well here. And if Black ever pushes, then we can go for this plan. Knight a4, b3, bishop a3, and target this weak c5 pawn. So I think queen e1 is a good way to maintain the tension. The other reason that queen e1 is a really nice move is it's multi-purpose, right? It's both defense of the e4 pawn, but also precursor to a kingside attack. Puts the queen in a nice position to come to h4. And then you can imagine after the key pawn break f5, we could have a bishop coming into h6, right? Maybe do a rook lift, something like that. You never know. Okay, so that I think would have been White's best continuation. e5 is not a good way to resolve this pawn tension because now it makes f5 difficult to achieve, at least more difficult. Not so much that the f pawn would be hanging, but that the e5 pawn would be undermined, and we definitely don't want to lose that pawn. So by playing e5, it's an enticing move. Hey, let me gain space, let me kick this knight off its post on f6, but it's not really what we're going for in the Grand Prix attack. We really want to prepare this pawn thrust f5. e5 kind of cuts across our own plan. But okay, I think White's decision making was, his logic was, I'm gaining space in the center. Okay, I've got good control over the center. Let me pivot here. Let me not go for a kingside attack. I want to play b3, knight a4, bishop a3, and attack the c5 pawn like you kind of do on the black side of a Nimzo-Indian, right? And try to go after this really weak c5 pawn. And then black played what I think is a pretty big mistake, f6. Don't ask me if this is a bad move, right? Ask this bishop. This bishop hates the move f6. Why? Because it completely blunts its scope, okay? And you always got to take care of your pieces, and this isn't taking care of your dark squared bishop. So, over to you now. This was, I would say, one of the turning points in the game. How would you respond with white here? Pause your videos. Okay, in the game, white played bishop a3, going full steam ahead with this plan of targeting the weak c pawn. But we can't just think about our own plans and our own ideas, right? We have to consider what our opponent's doing, and it's very important to resolve this central pawn tension on e5. So the best move in this position is e6. Congrats if you found that. I think white refrained from playing this move because he thought this pawn would be overextended, but it turns out it's not. After knight b6, there are several ways that we can defend this pawn. The one I like best is the thematic Grand Prix attack move, f5. Boom. And after g takes f5, rook e1, let's say queen d6, pressuring the e6 pawn, and queen e2. Wow, look at this position. There's a lot going on here. We always have this plan on the queen side of knight a4, bishop a3, going after this c5 pawn. But I think white has more in this position. Look at the cramping nature of this e6 pawn. Okay, it's really, if you look at it, cutting off black's position in two. Good luck getting those pieces over to the king side to play a defensive role. Meanwhile, look how white's pieces can come into black's house. Knight h4, queen h5, bishop h6, rook e3, maybe a rook lift to g3. Good luck with that, black. You're not surviving that. That's like a nightmare on Elm Street. Okay. But white didn't go for this. Instead, he was impatient. Played bishop a3, and you do not want to lose a key central pawn like that on e5. As the dude would say, that pawn was really tying the room together, okay? And now black is just in the driver's seat. Better center, bishop pair, active play. Black is better here, in my opinion. So white goes for counterplay, trying to restore the material balance, going after this weak c5 pawn. Black checks, and we have a bishop coming to a6. I think this is to prepare the advance c4. That would be nice for black to achieve, just to break up this blockade a little bit. But white's able to establish this really nice knight on c5. This is a great piece. You know, this is a great outpost for the knight. Notice in black's position, there's no dark square bishop, there's no knight, so we can't challenge this knight on c5 with a minor piece. And there's no b pawn. There's no d pawn. So black can't kick this knight off its perch. So understandably, black reacts quickly. He's like, man, this knight is really annoying. It's a really good piece. Let me try to get it out of here. So, over to you in this position. I think this is white's last chance to really hold on to the initiative and hold on to the advantage. It requires some accurate play here. Pause your videos. What would you play with white in this position? Okay, in the game, white played this super tempting move, knight e6. Totally understandable why white played a move like that. That's a really enticing square for the knight to come to. It's just like an octopus on this knight, all up in black's position, all up in the king's grill. But I think it would have been best here to play b4. We want to play on the dark squares. We want to maintain this knight on c5. And as we'll see in the game, bringing this knight to a light square, while it does look really enticing and like a really good move, black was able to kick this knight back and really reduce its activity. So you might be asking yourself in this position, well, what if queen a2? We got it covered with rook a1, skewer, okay? And another line that I looked at, rook takes f1, queen takes f1, and just dropping the queen back to b6, okay? Keeping tabs on this bishop on a6. Of course, we would never, ever want to give up this knight on c5 for this bishop on a6. That's just biting on granite here. That's got all of these pawns on light squares in its way. So I really like the move in this position for white, queen f4. Again, we're looking at a sideline here, but this is instructive. Now white is one move away from total positional domination. You get a rook on f1 and have control of the f-file, queen's landed on an f7, and Bob's your uncle. So, understandably, black has to play rook f8 in this position. So, over to you. What would you play with white in this sideline variation? Pause your videos. Nice job finding the queen sack. Queen takes f8, exclam, nice move. With the idea of knight d7, king f7, and regaining the queen. And after a4, we're just going to play a5, and white's going to bring home the bacon in this position. But instead, white opted for this really, really attractive looking move, knight e6. But watch how black is able to kick this knight back from this outpost. It's not really an outpost. White captures, and after e takes f6, here comes the rook to e8. White's got to save this pawn that's hanging on a2 now. Again, since the knight's not on c5, we no longer have this rook a1 skewer resource on our hands, so we definitely want to keep that a pawn on the board. And then white's able to just drive the knight back. The queen comes in, knight comes into f3, and then bishop c8. A really nice positional instructive move. I like this move a lot because, as we talked about before, the bishop here on a6 is just biting on granite on d3. Nice job rerouting this piece and finding it an active role in the game. Nice job by black. So white understandably plays h3 to try to keep the bishop out of g4. And black starts this plan of advancing the king and this 3-on-2 majority. White was really boxed in. Queen d2 is not a move that you would like to make, but what are you going to do? You know, the tables have really turned here. Now it's black that's just absolutely dominating the dark squares. And white felt compelled to try to break this blockade. I don't blame him, but now with the rook landing on the second rank, which is where you want your rooks, with black you want a rook on the second rank, with white you want a rook on the 7th. White has to go really passive in this position, and black correctly starts pushing his kingside pawn majority. White plays c4. I think the idea being, I want to remove this pin on the knight so that I can maybe reroute it to f3, maybe into d4, just so it can find some greener pastures. And black pushes on, and in this position, I'm going to turn it over to you. I look at this position Let's talk about this quickly. I look at this position and I think black's better just because of the activity of the rook and this bishop versus knight material imbalance. I think that's in black's favor. So what would you play with black in this position? So black ended up playing rook f2, putting more pressure on this knight. I think best here is rook b2, maintaining the annoying pin on the knight and going after these queenside pawns. And I think black is doing very well here. But instead, this lets white's rook get really active on the c file. Black gives up bishop for knight. Again, I don't think that's the trade that benefits black. I think that bishop, since there are pawns on both sides of the board, is better than the knight. But now white's rook is really active, and he's got this dangerous connected pass pawn duo on the queen side. So black's rook is going to have to get passive to stop these. So each side pushes their respective pawns, and black correctly gets his rook behind the pass pawn. That's where you want it. That's the key. That's the key defensive position, because now white's rook is really tied down and passive. So white does the same. This is kind of both attack and defense. He knows he needs to get his rook behind this dangerous pass d pawn. And after d2, white makes a practical decision here, I think, and plays rook takes d2. Right? You got less than 2 minutes on your clock. You could look at variations with queen e2, but it turns out actually that if both sides start pushing their pawns, black is actually winning that position. I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, so you can investigate that position on your own. But you know, we're looking at practical chess advice here, and I think rook takes d2 with 1 minute and 42 seconds left on your clock is a really good decision by white. And from here on out, white gets the rook behind the pass pawns, getting ready to push that to b8, and that will render black's rook immobile. So white's going to have no problem corralling these disconnected pass pawns on the king side. So really nice rook game play from white. I was really impressed by this. And white was able to gobble up these pawns no problem. Black doesn't really have much to do here. And the game ended in a draw by insufficient material. So really good game by Johnny. Really nice endgame rook play. You know, rook games are draws, but you know, you still have to play them out, and Johnny had a model endgame. You know, if we go back though, he really missed, you know, he played bishop a3 in this position and really missed this key idea, e6, knight b6, and f5. And after g takes, we get a position like this. And this shows the Grand Prix in all its glory. And again, maybe the computer can find a defense, but I don't even think Karpov or Petrosian would be comfortable defending this position. I know I certainly wouldn't. So, thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the analysis. If you haven't done so yet, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and like this video. And please check out my website, mvpchess.com, if you want to elevate your game. Thanks for watching.